In the beginning, when the cavalier and shitty friend Timo asks, "What does it feel like to die?" Don't be mad. We set the tone for a dystopian future in which one person's humanity is worth less than others. And it's not really a dystopian future. It's not a dystopian present day future. Now, it's our history. Right? It's our like entire world. It's our history, it's our present, it's our future, for sure.
Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Gaby17. And we're the Ghouls next door. The Expendables next door. Mm-hmm. Exploring the real life, historic, scientific, ethical horrors behind our cinematic fears. And closing out our Horrors of Society series, we are talking about the film Mickey 17.
And like, honestly, how could we talk about capitalism and society and the horrors of it without covering something by Bong Joon-ho? So it feels appropriate. He's always being like, capitalism bad. It's like his whole vibe. So it's good that we fit him in here for this series. And the movie was great. I liked it. Yeah.
It's definitely something that flew under the radar. Like, I didn't even know there was a film by Bong Joon-ho until like one of the like smaller theaters like sent out an email about like, oh, we're screening this, and I was like, I have to go. And then I dragged my husband to go see it because I am not going to miss a Bong Joon-ho film in theaters. And after watching it, I was immediately like, okay, we're covering it.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, and it's on Max now, I'm pretty sure, so you can watch it at home, which is good. If you haven't seen it in theaters.
Yeah, I think it like you said, it flew under the radar. I know not a lot of people have seen it, but those who did, it's kind of like a hit or miss. Like, it's kind of like lukewarm response in that it's no Parasite. It's back to some of the classic Bong Joon-ho that we love. Like, it definitely is giving like, absurd creature like host, or absurd apocalyptic scenario like Snowpiercer. Like, it felt to me, it feels very much that. But anyone who is unfamiliar with those pieces and are focused on the cinematic masterpiece that is Parasite, you might be kind of jostled by this.
It's definitely not a Parasite level time, but it's still good.
Not that kind of film.
Yeah, it's still it's a different vibe, like you were saying. Yeah. So
you're wrong,
I guess. Yeah.
No, but I mean, like, that, like, this film is very much a quintessential Bong Joon-ho film in that, like, it does have creatures, right? It does have fun creatures. It does have a scathing critique of capitalism and like our healthcare system and people treating other people terribly. That's just kind of his MO when it comes to films. And so I thought, to me, I was like, oh, this is exactly what I was expecting,
Yeah.
And not that like I knew what was going to happen ever. I didn't.
Super fair.
It was incredibly unexpected, but it still felt very much like what I was expecting to experience in a science fiction film by Bong Joon-ho.
Yeah, and it was like, even though it was like really crazy and silly, like, it was still very emotional. Like, I remember leaving it feeling like pretty sad. Like, just like, because what happens is sad, and it, when you know the reality enough, you're like, oh, I already see the little strings that lead me to what I might be thinking about society or like history, and I'm like, oh, ow. Yeah, because it's just like, it's like, we haven't gone to space and cloned a bunch of people, but we've also not treated people very nice, like, historically. So
and it's not like we wouldn't do that.
It's very believable. It feels like it could exist, and like not in like the fun way we envisioned potential space time. It's more like, oh, ew, we sent the worst ones to space, like the worst leader ever to space, and he is predictably doing what he would do if he
Yes.
was in space. So
Right.
yeah, it's a bummer. But accurate. So there's that.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's also like it has its funny moments too. Like there's like a levity that you have there, so that even in those really heavy moments that could be really heartbreaking, you can still like kind of move on. You're still interested to know what's going on, what's going to happen next. And it ends on a happy note. Like it does have like a nice little bow of an ending that like I would love to hope was real. You know, I would aspire to such an ending. It's just, you know, the way to get there is really heartbreaking. And yeah, did it need to be over 2 hours? I don't know. You know, I you know, I didn't feel like I was like nothing felt slow. Like I wasn't like, oh, come on, let's go for it. But I don't know if we needed all of the things that happened.
Yeah, I get what you're saying with that. Like,
yeah,
I agree. It didn't feel slow, but it also was long.
Yeah. Like it does. I'm a fan of not having movies be over 2 hours anymore. Like we just go back to not do 90 minutes. But I get it. Whatever.
Make it a show if it's gonna be long.
Yeah. Like I said in the Sinners episode, I think that Robert Pattinson did a wonderful job as two different people. I know that's another question people have of like, why was Mickey 18 so different from 17? And they do have like more or less a throwaway line if you're not paying attention that all this Mickeys are different in different ways. But I thought it was really like even just the way that they're standing there, like not saying anything. I was like, oh, I know that's 18. I know that's 17, you know? And so I think he did a really great job. And I've grown to become a decent fan of Pattinson and his acting abilities. I think he's people could fight me about this, but I think he's the best Batman. He's the most realistic Batman.
That's fair. I give you that. As a Batman hater, I get what you're saying and I agree. But
I think he did
my
wonderful.
Favorite Batman movie to watch? No.
Oh, it was mine. I had a lot of fun.
It was so long.
It was very long. 3 hours.
So long.
Right. But if a orphan's billionaire boy who was traumatized by bats decides to not go to therapy and instead punch, you know, the lower class people in order to heal his inner child, that's exactly what he would be like. He'd be awkward. He wouldn't want to touch women because he'd be like, what is a girl? He'd be that weird boy, and I think he did a wonderful job. So I know people might feel some type of way, but I was like, this is the most on point Batman I've ever experienced in my life.
Canon Batman. Like,
he the most like realistic if, you know, we didn't live in like, you know, fanatical world. But I think like comic book worlds, like there's definitely, you know, some really fun Batmans out there. And there's been so many. So he really made it his own, is all I'm saying.
My favorite is the animated Batman, but that's just because that one's fun.
Because everybody else is awesome in it. You know, that's not really...
No, I know. It's hard. It's not...
Kevin, but...
Different vibe.
Yeah, exactly. But I digress. We're talking about Mickey 17. So let's hop in, because I think, you know, something we saw when we were kind of researching and deciding to do this film, it's not being talked about a lot. And I was like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, this is the coolest film. So I think, you know, we might actually be the one telling you about these things or making you think about this kind of topic. So let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know, like, you know, are people not saying the stuff that you want to hear? And let's have a whole convo about it.
Do it. Go forth. To space.
Go just to infinity and beyond. So Mickey 17 is from this year, 2025, and it's about during a human expedition to colonize space, Mickey 17, a so-called expendable employee, is sent to explore an ice planet, and it's directed by Bong Joon-ho. And so Mickey 17 is an entertaining science fiction film that distills the fearful future of unchecked capitalism into a heartfelt comedic romp. Based on the book Mickey 7, written by Edward Ashton, the film follows Mickey, a lower-class, regular sweetheart, who, after some poor choices and even poorer placed trust, finds himself aboard a spaceship on its way to a new ice planet. And while the journey itself is both bleak and tempered hope, Mickey's specific experience is unique and heartbreaking. In a desperate effort to secure his seat on that ship to escape violent debt collectors, Mickey had signed up as an expendable, which is a human who is cloned and then used as a guinea pig for any scientific curiosity that the ship needs to explore. It honestly has some fun like science in there, and like the multiples and some of that. I enjoy it, and I really did enjoy Mickey's like delivery of information. Like I don't know why that happened, but it was kind of cool. You know, like I was just living for this guy.
Yeah,
like,
he's very fun.
You know,
Yeah.
like, sometimes you just get a bad lot in life.
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
So the ship is helmed, led by a fanatic politician, Kenneth Marshall, and his wife, Ilfa. And Marshall is followed by religious extremists who put him on a pedestal, worshiping him like a new age god. And the comparison to Trump and the radical maggots is hard to ignore, though actor Mark Ruffalo, who plays him, insists that was not his intention. It's like, come on. We got eyes and ears. He even did kind of like the stupid dance thing, and like the fact that Ilfa is there as like, you know, his like Lady Macbeth is a little different than like, because we don't really have a first lady in any real semblance of the word. But like, I mean, just the religion, the red hats. It's like, come on, okay. If you didn't know, Mr. Ruffalo, that's what you were doing. You did a good job anyway.
I mean, maybe he just said that for legal reasons. You know, he's not trying to get sued for defamation.
It's so true, especially right now, right?
Yeah. No,
when he made it back in 2022, he was like, well, the guy got, you know, so many felonies, there's no way he's going to run again.
Yeah.
He was like, he's going to go to jail.
Little did we know. Oh, my God.
Yeah. So.
But he's like, for legal reasons, it's not him. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, I just thought, what is the grossest, weirdest, awful politician man? And then that's what I came up with. I can't help that that's what it looks like.
It's a shame. It's a shame that there's a mirror.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. That you guys are finding a similarity there. Unfortunate. But Marshall rules the ship with a loose iron fist. Fat little fist, hosting special dinners with selective members in attempts to inspire the right people to assist with repopulating the new planet. A lot of ick, a lot of I was like, we need your beautiful white babies and your pure. It was a lot of like your pure, perfect new humans. And his weird teeth. He's also eager to expend Mickey wherever necessary, as he had suggested the use of an expendable in space to begin with, and fights to retain power in his greasy, clumsy, fat fists. You can tell he sucks. No one likes him. But he's the one like, oh, it's so unethical. We can't do expendables here on Earth, but we could do it in space. Because that's different. That's space no man's land. There's no laws up there. I can do whatever I want. Yeah. And they're like, I guess. No one's going to sign up for that.
Was the unethical thing, actually.
Yeah, who knew? And because Mickey is an expendable, we first meet him during the presumed death of his 17th self. And through flashbacks, we learn of the fate of his previous 16 Mickeys, falling victim to a range of torturous ends for the science team's data. One Mickey is left outside the spaceship, slowly dying of radiation poisoning, and instructed to notify the staff of every grueling piece of his death, right? How long before he begins bleeding from every orifice, before he's blind, and then obviously, ultimately, until he dies. They're like, take off your gloves so we can see your hands dead. And then it gets cut off. And he's just like, oh, well.
Because I pressed a button once, I guess. So.
Came out here, I just trusted y'all. The sweet and gentle Mickey's only solace is in the arms of his love, the powerful and intelligent Nasha. And they steal away for forbidden acts of intimacy, because it exhausts too much energy, and share an intense... yeah, too many calories. And share an intense and endearing love. Nasha cares greatly for Mickey, keeping him from bullies and interested parties, ladies on the ship, as well as suiting up to hold him during the more gruesome chemical death trials. That was one of the most heartbreaking things. I was like, have I ever loved anyone? Like, she was so pure and perfect and beautiful, and it was just like, it meant a lot to me watching her be so strong, and then also just such a genuinely good, intelligent person. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't expecting her to be that, and that she was so multifaceted and genuine was such a nice like surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Watching through, I was like, oh my god, thank god there's someone so good for him. And like, it could have been so easy that she could have been another cruel thing in his world.
Mm-hmm.
And so Bong Joon-ho kind of gave us that, like, gave us all a little bit of Nasha by bringing her into the world. When they finally arrive on the new planet, Mickey is subjected to a wide range of trials and deaths to find a vaccine for the diseases found on the planet. And once acquired, Mickey and a small team explore the new world. They discover the only other life forms on the planet, which are these fuzzy, isopod-like beings that inadvertently cause the death of one of the members, who was a non-expendable. And as punishment for not dying instead of the non-expendable, Mickey is tasked with wandering the new world, where he eventually finds himself fallen into an ice cavern where he's presumed dead. This is what we saw in the beginning. And going to be eaten by the creatures known as creepers. Only they didn't eat him at all. And instead, they save him because they're really sweet and nice. And they're like, get up, Mickey. They're like, Mickey, you know? And this, because they thought he was dead and his friend reports so, this leads to a new Mickey being printed while the previous Mickey 17 is still alive, which then leads to a curse case of multiples, which is illegal. So they would both have to die because we can't have two of you.
Yeah.
It's illegal. It's bad, even though we're in space. Whatever.
Yeah, the last one was a serial killer. That doesn't mean all of them will be, but that one was, so...
But I mean, having too many at once is a struggle. Although I was right there with Nasha when she was like, okay, yeah, I have two of you.
Yeah, shadow clone you
two
too,
Mickeys.
yeah.
I'm saying that all the time. Like, yes, I'd like to clone you. Okay?
Yeah.
This sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Double the pleasure, right? Double the trouble. But it is a problem. They're not supposed to be there. Mickey 18 is quite different from our sweet Mickey 17. And he has a mean streak and condemns 17 for his meekness and history of passivity. And because they can't both exist, they do try to kill each other a little bit. Though Mickey is like, we can just 17 is like, we can switch off, you know, like take turns. And then as soon as like, okay, fine, we're gonna share Nasha, he's like, okay, wait.
Actually, I hate you. Go away.
Yeah. She's mine.
Yeah.
Nasha had told 17 that his iterations tended to be a bit different, leaning into different emotions more heavily than others. Like this one, like, you know, number 6 was whiny. And, you know, like 13 did this. And so there was a history of like each one being slightly different. And it's not exactly explained. And some people are like, I don't get why he was so different. It's him every time. But like, first of all, you're gonna change. Your life is gonna change if you get reprinted. But I also think there might be a connection to like each death, like maybe a reaction to his emotions on the way out, like as he was dying. Because like that last one, like with Timo being like, what's it like to die?
Yeah.
You know, and just being kind of like over it, especially like having Timo be the last person that he saw, like presumably, and that kind of thing, like being in that situation, being stuck out there because a non-expendable died, like all of that could absolutely lead to him doing that. And maybe like the whiny one came after like an incredibly painful experience, and so he was just feeling really bad.
Trauma.
Yeah. So I think like absolutely that could be what we're getting. 17 and 18 battle to exist, and as they also fight to protect the creepers from the greasy, pathetic hands of Marshall and his sauce-obsessed wife.
Yep.
She's a little freak. Bong Joon-ho loves like a white woman with like really long features.
Yeah.
He's like, I love a long fingered lady.
Yeah.
The movie is 2 hours and 17 minutes of very overt commentary on our capitalistic, exploitative, and fanatical present that will undoubtedly lead to some tortured and bleak future, even if not this dramatic version, certainly something equally dim. This is how we're feeling, which leads me to my first topic, which is Trump's dim future. Ugh. Though the film is quite lighthearted and charmingly bizarre, there's no room for misunderstanding the heavy-handed commentary by Bong, something that his films are well known for. He's not subtle, and he enjoys that.
Yeah.
And when Mickey, in a desperate attempt to leave this planet to escape the terror of debt collectors, signs the paperwork to become an expendable, a treacherous sandstorm brews outside the glass building, and people are frantic to abandon a planet that's intent on killing them. Right, we can infer from that event and from the kind of fanatical energy of everyone in that space, desperate to leave, that natural disasters are on the rise, as well as crime and desperation. Right, like we're seeing the acts that Mickey and Timo did to get to where they are. Like there's clearly a desperation. There's like a surge in crime and police are not to be trusted as well. Like there's a whole bunch of things. So there are many parallels to the fears expressed in this film to our own when exploring the damage done during Trump's first term when this film was written, and it was produced actually in 2022. So they were like, that last thing that we just went through is really bad, right?
Yeah.
To now an apocalyptic second term that's somehow even more reckless and unpoliced, undoubtedly spelling a dark, grim future for our planet and humanity. It's so fun. You didn't even know it was going to be that way.
Yeah.
With our own natural disasters rising in frequency and severity, our climate crisis is no secret. Temperatures are rising, breaking records for the hottest days while melting our ice caps. And then someday, like it was June 1st, it was cold.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the summer. What are we doing?
Yeah.
We are at a point where the crisis is no longer a matter of stopping the effects, but instead aiming to dampen the intensity of climate change. Like we are at the point of no return, and we need all hands on deck, every country, every person to be invested in saving the planet. Yeah. Unfortunately, with our planet at great risk, by electing or rigging Trump into another term, and in turn providing horrible projects like Project 2025 to have more power, we've moved even further into our own doom, right? We're kind of solidifying it's going to be worse.
Yeah, like thinking of our nature apocalypse stuff, like we had the climate clock. I just looked it up. We're 4 years, 48 days, and 16 hours until irreparable damage has taken place. And what ends in about 4 years? His presidency.
It's going to be expedited. Like it's going to increase because not only are we not moving forward to put things in place to protect us or to undo damage, we're pushing things back. We're taking away any of the progress we've made. So it's making even worse damage. So that is going to accelerate that clock. It's going to accelerate the damage. And so like a world where there's that horrific sandstorm outside and everyone's trying to jump into whatever space vehicle they can and doing something as desperate as signing up as an expendable, it doesn't sound too far-fetched, to be quite honest. Project 2025 and Trump's administration spells horror for much of our country's checks and balances, as well as our overall democracy, but it also threatens the entirety of the world. Like I just explained. We've already seen the impact of Trump's ill-advised and foolish tariffs on foreign governments, as well as our own. But Project 2025 also leans heavily in preserving the status quo and empowering oil and gas billionaires and, using up our natural resources and steering away from any green or clean energy solutions. Its goal is to keep the power in their hands, and the folks who already have money and power to begin with. And during a time in which we desperately need to be making evasive and reparative action to alleviate the damage done to our planet, there's little hope we'll be able to stop the crisis or even soften the blow at this point. It's looking bleak, right? And Mickey 17 with that hopeful ending, that's many a year in the future.
Yeah.
We have to go through some scary stuff before we get to that. And that's a little planet that got that, you know?
Yeah, like Ice Planet. Oh my God, I don't even want to go there. I want to die here. Like, it looks awful and cold and
Yes. The only solace is that Marshall left Earth. So maybe there's a chance, you know?
Yeah.
So it's no surprise that while Marshall's policies and plans most likely contributed to the crisis on their planet Earth, he is also the first in line to leave the planet. He's like, I'm taking this ship and we're going, right? And while it would bring me so much pleasure to say goodbye to Musk and his lackeys as they board a doomed flight to Mars for colonization, I'm just saying another Titan submersible event, right? Part 2. Get one once a year. That'd be nice. Such an event wouldn't occur until after our planet reached the point of no return. And as Kat mentioned, check out our Don't Look Up episode for more on that idea overall, like the rich escaping the planet after it's been severely broken, leaving us all to fend for ourselves when they did it. Like, that's just kind of how it goes. We've already barely survived one Trump presidency, of which we are still very much feeling the effects of, and will still for many decades to come. So after his first term, we saw the elimination of environmental regulations, horrifying immigration policies, closer ties with Israel, and a reshaping of the federal judiciary. In his second term, he threatens a brand new span of horrors now that much of our checks and balances have been dismantled or blatantly ignored. While the film is very much a science fiction comedy, it leads towards speculative fiction when viewed in a world plagued by rampant AI and administrative rhetoric inspiring a blatant disregard for humans and severe cuts to our environmental protection, healthcare, and human rights programs.
Yeah.
It's only getting worse, right? So I think that's a big part of what this film is about. I think another big part about this film is the ethics of scientific studies. With the lovable and kind Mickey acting as this like live action crash test dummy, we're forced to feel intensely uncomfortable with his treatment. It's on purpose. In the beginning, when the cavalier and shitty friend Timo asks, "What does it feel like to die?" Don't be mad. We set the tone for a dystopian future in which one person's humanity is worth less than others. And it's not really a dystopian future. It's not a dystopian present day future. Now,
it's our
right?
History. It's our like entire world.
It's our history, it's our present, it's future, for sure.
Yeah.
It is like the film itself is a wild and comical science fiction world of fantastical science like cloning, but the emotions and motivations of those characters are very real. Humanity's history of experimenting on lower class and vulnerable persons to advance scientific discoveries is far from news. Okay, you've heard it, you know about it. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this show, right? Throughout periods of time in which horrific human rights violations were happening in broad daylight, right? Slavery, Jim Crow, the Holocaust. There were even more terrors occurring in the dark in the name of science, right?
Yeah.
Like they were getting away with all kinds of stuff because they were like a magician being like, look it over here. While they were like, you know, do another murder and they're like, it's science, so it's okay. America's history is saturated with abuses to the Black bodies that helped build it, from the Tuskegee syphilis study to the current day forced sterilization of Black women in prison. Like, it's still going on and it's still in the name of science or some crazy eugenics nonsense, right? These are horrors that are so deep that many Black Americans still today don't trust in the medical system or in science. And who could blame them for their caution? It was a big issue when we were talking about COVID because it was like a really valid hesitancy to trust in any medical professionals or in a vaccine or any of that, because there's an intense history of Black and brown bodies being experimented on. We're told one thing and next thing you know, you're sterilized or you're infected with some horrible disease. So that hesitancy was super valid, but it also like crippled a lot of like the movement and ability to get the help that they needed because the trust just wasn't there. So the use of Mickey's expendable body, a body that even before he filled out that paperwork was already very much expendable, is not a deep leap from reality. Right? We can look to the history of vaccines, a favorite discussion amongst students of ethics, in weighing one life versus the so-called greater good as an example of how easy it is for humanity to look the other way. This is like health ethics 101. Yeah. It's like one of the only things I remember from college. Because Edward Jenner discovered the smallpox vaccine by injecting the son of his gardener with cowpox and then smallpox to test his hypothesis that one would cancel the other out. Essentially, that's the vaccine. Yeah. It's named after vaca, the Latin word for cow. Yeah. And that's because cow maidens who were infected with cowpox were not getting smallpox. So it was a super valid, understandable theory. The idea that he's just like, I'm taking this man's son, infecting him with one thing, he gets sick, he doesn't die, and then infecting him with another thing. Yep. is so crazy to me. And while this rather shady study did result in the discovery of vaccines and later the eradication of smallpox, it has led to many conversations on the ethics of this medical study. Because how much agency did that young boy have in this experiment? Like when he was a lower class, he was a worker boy. He was the son of a man who worked for this man.
Yeah.
Who was in charge of this man's paycheck.
Yeah.
His child.
Yeah.
Right? So how much agency did he have? And had Jenner been wrong in thinking cowpox could immunize someone from smallpox, then he'd just kill him. He would have killed him. And then what, right? The only reason why it's not an issue is because he was correct.
Yeah. Right?
Like, but if he had just kind of, like, if it was a wild speculation and he just injected some boy and killed him, what the hell?
That's a serial killer, yeah.
Right?
Yeah, like...
And, like, I do doubt that the death of this one lower-class boy would have halted the studies. He would have did it again. He would have found somebody else, right? This is what we've seen throughout history. These lives mean little when scientific discoveries could be had, right? Yeah. What's one life for all of the lives that matter more than that one life, right? Mm-hmm. What's one Mickey when we have so many, he's just going to come back, right? We saw that with the non-expendable person. She clearly meant more because we couldn't just bring her back.
Yeah.
So imagine a future where we continue these experiments on the vulnerable populations of our planet, but we can also bring those very people back to experiment on them all over again. It's like an infinite cheat code for power and science, all at the expense of these expendables. The scientists on the ship inject Mickey with all manner of diseases and chemicals in pursuit of knowledge. The shortest lifetime of Mickey's is for like a few minutes as they wake him up from the printer with a syringe of a mysterious liquid.
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the world, you're dying. And we see montages of him cordoned off in sterile rooms, dying slow deaths, vomiting, skin full of blisters, and utterly alone, until the brilliant and kind Nasha join him. But even then, like, see him out in the middle of space, just dying, right? Mm-hmm. And we later discover that one of the chemicals Mickey had been injected with wasn't for the vaccine for the planet, but instead a chemical weapon that they later planned to use on the creepers. So he was a guinea pig for a weapon of mass destruction, essentially, for chemical warfare. And it's like not all sketchy and violating experiments on the human body lead to the exonerating answer of a vaccine. Some experiments are far more horrific, right? Like, how do we get mustard gas? How did we get any of the chemical warfare that we currently have that people are actively using on an entire group of people? Mm-hmm. How do we know that it could do that to people without trying it on people to begin with, right? Yep. You have to just question that. Like, those scientific things and advances came from somewhere. They came from studies. They came from experiments. And somebody was the Mickey for that.
Yeah.
Like, we've had many a Mickey. And I'll tell you one thing. Mickey is one of the few that are white, you know? Yeah. Most of them would have looked a lot different, right? Mm-hmm. Which leads me to my last point as I digress and get off of this pedestal for why I think Mickey 17 is super underrated. Like, I get it. It's not perfect for sure. But I think there is a lot that's being said. And whenever a film asks you to question things or to look things up or just think about the world that's around you in the future that we have in the systems that are in place, I think it's done a wonderful job. Like, if a film does that, then it's worth talking about. And so I do hope that you watch it, which I think one of the biggest takeaways, and as kind of cheesy as the ending was, I think there's a strength in the approach that Bong Joon-ho had in creating Mickey the way that he did for this film. Like, again, I mentioned before that he's this like goofy guy and he's like, well, you know, stuff happens to me. And that's super endearing and sweet, right? Like, but that's so intentional. Like, it's definitely a funny gag that you're like, oh, this poor guy, like, come on. And you like Mickey 18 want to be like, just stick up for yourself. Yeah. But him being that way is so important for this story because there's power of empathy at the end of the world. It's quite deliberate and important that the Mickey we come to love in the film is a truly kind and soft-hearted man. And like I said, even Mickey 18 had an intense care within him as he expresses the same frustrations viewers may feel towards him, where he's like, stick up for yourself, right? But even Mickey 18 still has a kindness in him. He's just like, you know, there's a limit to how much a man can take. 18 lives worth of limits.
Mickey versus, yeah.
Yeah, right, exactly. But he's still like, the reason, his motivations for doing all those things were care. Like he cared for Nasha, he cared for the people, and he wanted to end the suffering. And the only way to do that was to be drastic and crazy. Because what 17 was doing and all the ones before him ain't it. Yeah. You know? But as viewers, like, we want Mickey 17 to win, right? We want him to be free of the trials and to live out his life with Nasha. We cringe in our outrage as he hangs outside that ship dying of exposure to radiation. We soften and hurt as we watch him shiver and vomit in the cold. We may even cry as Nasha fights her way to his side, holding him so he doesn't have to suffer alone anymore. Right? Like, we are going through those emotions with him, and the only reason we can do that is because he's so beautiful, right? Yeah. It's intentional to have the simple, kind Mickey as our hero, as well as having Nasha be such a loving, strong, and genuine human as well. Like, also very important that both of these people are the ones we're looking to as our heroes, right? She's a ride or die who doesn't hesitate to help others in need, putting her own body at risk to help the man that she loves or a small creature that she doesn't fully understand. Like, she's doing it, right? And Bong is asking us about our own capacity for empathy, right? Can we care for another human being? Are other people expendable to us? Are creatures or other people who may not look like us worthy of care, respect, and kindness? And in our Wicked episode last time, we talked about how easy it is for people to fall for the trap of othering a group of people, of scapegoating them, and later allowing inhumane treatment because we have been led to think so little of them, right? It is an easy trap to fall into. But our capacity for empathy is a great power that we all need to strengthen right now. In a world where people are being kidnapped from our country under the guise of making America great again, or white again, quite honestly, or where the lives of Palestinians dwindle every single day during the onslaught of violence and genocide by Israel, our empathy can feel like a heavy cross to bear. It honestly feels like weakness less than like it is a strength. But that empathy is the only thing that can save those very same lives, that can bring those people home and can change the world for the better. And Bong encourages us to be the Mickey and Nashas that we want to see in the world, right? To pedestal love and care above all else, because only then can we get through these dark and challenging times and hopefully have some semblance of a happy ending like we see in the film.
Yeah, a future, you know, worth fighting for, a future worth sticking around for.
Yeah, a future where people are still there.
Yeah, or at least the planet, man. Like, you know, like if we can't be, at least let something live.
Yeah.
Yeah. It hurts, but also it was really good. It was like necessary ouch, as most things are. And yeah, it was hard watching him die so many times, and I think that was the biggest thing for me, where I was like...
But I even think, like, if he had been Mickey 18 the whole time, and we watched that version of him die, I think there's a little less empathy that happens, because he's not so, like, hopeless or, like, delicate. Like, you don't care for him in the same way. Like, you want to protect Mickey 17, because he's got a purity to him.
Yeah, he has an innocence about him
that Mickey 18 don't have. He's like, I'll murder the world. Like, if, you know, he was doing it, we would feel like, okay, you got yourself into this mess. Whereas with Mickey 17 and all the ones before him, you're like, God, the world did this to you.
Yeah. No, it's super valid. I mean, I empathize, I think, with both, but I agree that Mickey 17, like, definitely had, like, you wanted to protect him, and that mattered for sure. Of the worker exploitation that took place in this film, Mickey definitely experiences the worst of it. As Gabe got into, Mickey 17 shows us a very depressing but hauntingly realistic future in which the planet is dying. We got 4 years on this. But not till everything
This
explodes, but till like we just can't like really fix it super easily. It's gonna take a really long time to reverse the damage that's taken place. And the Trump Elon hybrid of a man with his cult-like followers leading this exhibition to space. So it's worker exploitation and space capitalism. So really like the two worst things combining into one.
It's like Alien.
Yeah, like they aim to find a new planet for humanity to live on since Earth is a bummer. Like it's no longer a viable option. It's really not safe. And this is, as Gabe just mentioned, Alien is another example of something we've covered that's very similar to this, and that's like a big company or a politician doing shady stuff in space. The Expanse also covers this. We've had a lot of shows or movies that kind of touch these themes, but I do think Mickey 17 stands alone, like in the sense that like it did do something different. Like usually we see robots or we see just like regular people or you know, or aliens, and like this was like clones and like the ethical implications of that, but also like a very, I feel like even in The Expanse, like you didn't witness as much of like the leadership and the poverty that was taking place even in the belt. Like you saw the poverty, but not so much like the people who were being the absolute worst over there in the belt. Like they were stranded, they couldn't go anywhere, but like you didn't have like a Trump-esque man yelling nonsensical things at them, kind of gaslighting you into thinking everything is great. So predictably capitalism sucks, even in the vast abyss of space. I don't think it's a future that Octavia Butler envisioned when they hoped for us to take flight to the stars.
No. No.
If anything, they were like, abandon your hierarchies, and this guy's like, take the hierarchies to space. And Mickey as an expendable acts as an example of how quickly, as Gabe said, humanity can be socialized into dehumanizing a person. What is fun about Mickey 17, though, is that we already know life is expendable to those in power. But like we see this dramatized version of this problem through the use of cloning, and also like the comedy of the film really helps balance. Like I will say, like in my empathy and mytism, I was like, oh, I'm still sad even when the funny stuff's happening. But like it was definitely like it still hit in terms of like lightening it a little bit, because otherwise it would just be like really hard to get through. You have to like entertain a little bit when you're teaching something so sad. Just to like kind of
give us some levity.
Yeah, you gotta give someone like enough hope to want to do something about it, instead of like, for example, Don't Look Up, where you're just kind of really depressed at the end with not really knowing what to do with that. Like you get like a kind of, even if it's like tied up in a way that like maybe you weren't satisfied with it, like some people were saying they didn't love the ending, having a hopeful ending in a time where, like, if we think of Squid Games, where it ended in the current form, we don't have the new season yet, but like it ended so sad that like I needed days to emotionally recover from that season of Squid Games. I think we need some happy endings, even if they're a little like unrealistic or like to what we're dealing with right now, because we need to be able to envision a future where that isn't a thing anymore and we did stop it and it doesn't exist, because otherwise we can't dream that up for ourselves. So I think the ending, as with the critiques, like it was purposeful, and like we kind of needed that right now. Like I think if it ended depressing, I really wouldn't have been able to like go about my week.
Well, it was also important like to show the strength of Mickey and Nasha in their goodness being winners, because what does it say if all these horrible things happened and then Mickey and Nasha don't win? It says like it doesn't matter if you're a good person. Like it literally does the opposite of what Bong Joon-ho was aspiring to do. So I get it could be a little cheesy, but that's on purpose, like you're saying, like so we can envision a future in that, and so that we can put that power and the importance of being a good person, like as a heroic act, worthy of like surviving.
Yeah, and that like they'll win. Yeah. So When the white man can't exploit Earth any further, they will flee accountability in their crimes amongst the stars. Predictably, Elon Musk wants to be that white man. So bad. As Gabe mentions, Musk has his own plan to colonize Mars via SpaceX. And between Starlink satellites falling out of the sky or Tesla cars breaking apart piece by piece on the road, there is very little optimism to be had for a Mickey 17 future. If he's the guy that Trump takes with him to space, and he's the one building it will quickly turn submersible. Like, none of the regulations are being maintained.
Let's do it tomorrow.
And it's like, that's super real. But all jokes aside, there'll be a lot of innocent people who go and who aren't even just like MAGA people. Like they're
employees.
Still human, even though they're crazy. Like,
yes, no, for sure.
It's like they're manipulated by this man, and yes, they deserve Earth consequences, but maybe not space consequences. I don't know,
or underwater consequences.
Yeah, it's just like, let their farms fail, but like we don't gotta like send them to space to explode, you know. Or I don't know. Some people might argue that they do, and that's fine. But like, it's just like there's gonna be innocent people who go too, and those people are the ones who are gonna be harmed by these ridiculous men driving their phallic planes into the sky. So like they just like it's.
Ew.
I do want them to go. Yeah. I just want them to take as few people with them as possible.
Like the submersible, minus the boy who was in there. Yeah. Like everybody else, sure.
Yeah. So it's
just put
like,
those two. And Jeff Bezos. Sorry, I'm manifesting.
Yeah, let Star Trek's plot line come to fruition, but without like
without nuclear war. Yeah, for sure.
But all that's to say is they want to go to space so bad because they know that everything they're doing to the planet is going to blow up in their face. And where else can they flee accountability than the stars, especially after they decimate the planet and what little is left of it. So I'm not saying we shouldn't research space or even travel to space more. Like, we need to know what's up there. I get it. NASA's cool. I just think it shouldn't be at the cost of what little planet we have left. Like, to launch the rockets that he, at the rate that he wants to, would like immensely damage the already damaged ozone layer, the technology he would have to find to make the rockets and make them able to fly and be transported at the rate that he has them pitched in his like SpaceX.com pitch of Mars colonization. Is the resources he would have to mine would exacerbate the already huge climate problems, as well as just damage the ozone layer and come at the cost of like human
like lives. The Congo currently.
It'd be like that, but like even more and even worse, because the rate at which he's trying to make space capitalism and space colonization happen is not sustainable. And there's also a ton, if you want to just be bummed, there's a lot of articles about space capitalism and space colonization, and people like really excited about that, and it's really gross. And
it's like sorry. Well, I was just gonna say, it's like, you know, even now, like even with, if you remove the like huge distance between like us and the space capitalism effects, like that is a very obvious, like them leaving the planet that they destroyed, you know, that's a very obvious example of them like fleeing responsibility. But even now, like today, that version is that, you know, they mine and they destroy these you know, vulnerable places, generally populated by people of color, like the Congo. They exploit them and damage their environment, and then that very place is the one that's plagued by the climate change things. Like those are the ones who are being plagued by the natural disasters and by like the bad drinking water, and have like chemical, like Argentina with their intense chemicals, like all of those things. Like those people who are already exploited and harmed are then further harmed by the actions, like the reaction of the earth, like fighting back. So like that's just a smaller version that's it's happening right now of the larger issue that people like make science fiction. Right? It's like currently the earth hurts and the people here are hurting. hurting, and the people who did the hurting are not being held accountable.
Yeah. And they don't plan to be. Like, there's a lot of rich people who have their eyes on the stars. Like, they want to go to space. They plan to exploit us as much as possible while they're still here in order to get there. And there's a lot of articles about it. We have them linked in the blog. It's depressing. I recommend checking them out, just so you know what's going on. But it's definitely gross because, like, they sound so excited about it. They're pitching it like it's the next railroad, you know?
Yeah.
They're like so hype about exploiting all this labor and all these people to send themselves to space to make a planet on Mars that, like, why I don't get why they think that's going to be good. Like, why not try to fix what's here? Why do you need to go to Mars? Answer that question. You know, climate change.
What's up there?
There's a reason you want to go there, and could you say that out loud? Maybe.
Yes.
For everyone in the room to hear. Yeah.
I also recommend when you're reading those to also maybe read It's Not That Radical by Michaela Loach. It is also really depressing because to read currently, just because a lot of what she's saying is like, you know, we have to make the changes now and they're really big. But she does a good job of like at least instilling a little bit of hope and resources and action, and kind of, you know, breaking down some of those barriers and better understanding what the climate crisis is. So I do recommend that in addition to reading all of the
you need
articles.
a next step that's hopeful or like practical and gives you like next steps of things to do. So absolutely. And if you want to envision a future where we get taken to space against our will, but we abandon all of our hierarchical tendencies and like get a new Earth, but it's like not horrible and they rebuild the old Earth. Dawn by Octavia Butler, I highly recommend. It's pretty helpful.
The Lilith Brood series.
Yeah, the Lilith Brood series. It's science fiction that is, I really enjoyed. It is a little depressing. They have depressing stuff in there too. It was before any of this was envisioned, but it's also very good for science fiction. But my next section is worker isolation and the reason for one expendable. So for me, the use of one expendable, like instead there wasn't like a group, there wasn't a line, there wasn't a bunch of people who signed up. That felt super intentional. Ignoring the possibility of the multiples for a second, like it felt purposeful to have Mickey as the only one continuing to be cloned. While we can look at cloning and downloadable consciousness as a pathway to live forever in a new flesh prison, something that the rich would usually covet, I was initially like surprised that they would use this like technology on this innocent man who like has little power or status, like, but then I remembered, oh, you got to test it first, and he is the animal with which that they've decided does not have life worth preserving and is going to be expendable to
he lives forever, he works forever.
Yeah, and then it gives them a way to test it so that they can clone themselves safely, which I guess you kind of get as like that flashback at the end that like wasn't real but maybe was.
The like dream.
But yeah, living forever has long been the goal of the hyper wealthy. But after thinking about it for a minute, it makes sense as a means of worker exploitation and also as a representation of the hyper wealthy using lower class populations as experiments for their betterment. If anything, the most unrealistic piece of this picture was that Mickey was a white man, as Gabe said, since historically that has not been the case. And at first, I also questioned the fact that more people weren't signing up for this kind of position, aside from maybe that they had learned better from the world than to trust a company in this way. And like only a white man would be brave enough to think the government wouldn't do that. But yeah, it was just, I was like, wow, this is really interesting. I was like, oh, maybe that's not right. And then I was like, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that actually makes a lot of sense. This feels very intentional. But the fact there was only one Mickey was important because the selection of Mickey and his solitude isolated Mickey so entirely that he could not have anyone relate to him, and he could therefore not relate to many of the other people on the ship. And therefore would be easier to dehumanize and exploit. There is a lot of literature around the idea of isolation as a tool for oppression, and it felt very intentional to me that there was only one slot available for the expendable position, in that it made it so that no one would be able to empathize with Mickey entirely because they did not experience what he did. He was all by himself. And it made it so it was easier to dehumanize and devalue each of his 18 lives. And it also felt intentional that his love interest was a Black woman, arguably the only other human, like historically, that might know what Mickey is going through in this dystopian hellscape of late stage space capitalism. So worker exploitation extends past the isolation of a person from the means of production. Essentially, like, it's not just you don't know what you're making by making wrenches or whatever, or like screws. It's also that they don't want us to talk to each other. They want us to be isolated from each other, because that benefits the oppressors. So that's why places will tell you can't unionize, don't discuss your salaries with your coworkers, don't become friends with your coworkers, even though that's like 90% of your day. You know what I mean? Like, don't find friends or love in the workplace, because like, even though that's like your entire life, you don't get to be home ever, because you're working like 8 hours a day, whatever, it's fine. But the goal of this is to keep us from talking to each other, because together we have power. And the difference is, with Mickey 17, is that this story is in literal space. The stakes in space are even higher than on land, because at least on land, the boss couldn't stop feeding you the gray goop or melt you in the incinerator when you stopped listening to him. Or if you did something he didn't like. There was a lot scarier consequences, I feel like, in space, which made it like, I get why he set it in space for that reason, because it like really upped the stakes, like kind of how Snowpiercer upped the stakes, because we're in you can only be in the train, you can only be in the ship, like you could get lifted, like you get shot out in the airlift or whatever. What is it called? Airlock, thank you. Like you could just get sent to space. There's no escape. So it's even scarier to have the idea of mutiny or revolution in that kind of environment, because it's not really safe to fight either. If you break the ship, what happens to you? You're stranded. So I feel like it was a lot easier to exploit that population, but it really like upped the stakes of what we would see on land. On land, they can take away your job, your livelihood. They can bust unions and funnel money into politicians' pockets to make working conditions worse. But they can't kill you.
Like overtly.
Yeah. Unless you try to talk about their wrongdoings in court after the fact. And all that's to say that by placing our population in space, you made them even more vulnerable. And Mickey was the essential piece of the space exploitation puzzle, because even though everyone else was also being exploited in space within the film, by making someone who is exploited worse, it created a degree of separation that made those who were not continuously murdered over and over again feel like they mattered more. Had some sort of grander purpose. At least their lives were not as bad as Mickey.
You always need someone below you.
Yeah, they had to be better than Mickey. Yeah, to validate their lack of food they were receiving, as well as the lack of the freedom that they had in their day-to-day lives. They were told they had to count calories, refrain from sex and connection. Like, that's a lot of stuff that, like, you tell enough people that they're not going to be happy with you. But at least they weren't Mickey, so they needed him to exist as that. And this separation was intentional from an empathy standpoint, but also from it could be much worse standpoint. The people on the ship were desensitized to Mickey's death and treat him less than. Mimicking, like, the direction of their leader, we see, like, Commander Marshall and Jaffa time and time again show how little people on the ship matter to them. Like in the dinner scene honoring Mickey and the soldier. And it really just shows how like monstrous they were and how little they cared about people. And really that was what like sent the parallel to like day-to-day life even more. Because it's like, we see that Commander Marshall only views women as future breeders and wombs for the next generation of human and are otherwise invaluable. He didn't want her to be a soldier. He wanted her to have kids, probably his kids, because he was gross, much like our Republican administration. And simultaneously, Jaffa shows that she views Mickey's life with less value than a literal rug on the ground of the ship. Much like how rich people will value the latest tech, clothing, or home goods above the human lives it takes to create them. In the most American way possible, there's also someone who lives they value even less, which is the native population of the planet, they have literally invaded, reduced to the pursuit of sauce, which felt like a nod to the fact Europe colonized the entire world for spices, tea, and seasoning, entirely ignoring the suffering and loss of lives that came at the cost of that. So,
yeah, they even like keep calling them aliens, and Nasha's like, "We're the aliens, you idiots!
Yeah,
like we're literally not from here.
Yeah,
we showed up on their land and started murdering them. Yeah. Sound familiar?" Anyway,
not when you're not taught history, it doesn't. Oof. But I'll talk a little bit about cloning and then we can be done. But like, there's a lot of cloning that's been taking place and I didn't even know about it. So that was stressful. So cloning is already beginning to be possible. We have clones at animals pretty successfully at this point, and often apparently inside there's an article called "Inside the Creepy, Surprisingly Routine Business of Animal Cloning on the Atlantic" by Bianca Basker. They impact the cloning of carcasses for the purpose of making more meat, using the cells of high quality animal carcasses to create new living ones, basically to be harvested by like the meat industry. Through this process,
covered that in our Margaret Atwood.
Oh, we did?
Episode.
Hilarious. Look at me not have a memory. Thank you, Gabe. It was like, that's new to me. And I was like, we already talked about it before. It's so
from the Mad Adam trilogy.
Oh, yeah. But through this process, they successfully cloned living cows. And cloning has barely been happening since 1996 with Dolly the sheep.
Jeez.
Yeah. Dolly lived until 2003, but it was found that the cloned sheep aged prematurely. There was more than one clone, and both of them started aging quicker than the naturally born sheep. And essentially, we're also experiencing a higher rate of tumor growth. So both sheep, one died from tumors growing in their lungs, and the other was put to sleep once they found there were tumors in her lungs, which was Dolly. Yeah, there's also a push for legislation to criminalize the cloning of humans. It's already, most countries have already outlawed human cloning for obvious ethical reasons. But animal cloning is widely unrestricted. We could be eating and drinking products from cloned animals today, as it is approved from the FDA to do so. There's also, yeah. It's gross. And I mean, like, I don't know. It's gross. I saw also there's like this thing where you can like clone a chicken nugget, but without like an actual chicken. And I was like, oh, chicken nuggets are almost ruined for me, maybe forever. That's disgusting. I hate how that looks. I don't want to eat that.
That's literally in Margaret Atwood's Mad Adam. They have these like chicken things that are just made up of like thighs or breasts or whatever, and they're just like, they're alive because they need to be, but they're like not. They like, don't have any sentience really, but they just make these little nugs people or nug beings. Yeah. And the reason, like what you're saying, like 1996, everything in that book and in her books are all stem from reality, from history. Like nothing is actually far-fetched. It's just like, okay, we take that and we, look ahead the same way Octavia Butler did. Like they're not they're not predicting the future, they're just looking at the past.
Yeah, they're just looking at the pattern recognition.
Yeah.
They're looking around and they're like, ooh, that seems like that could be turned into this pretty easily, actually. Yeah, but like there's a decent amount of cloning taking place. It is illegal in most places for it to be done to humans. It's not illegal in the US yet, apparently. But in some states it is, but like others it's not. There's also like reproductive cloning and other like eugenics-based things.
Talking about ridiculous, like our ridiculous administration and cloning. Did you see that Trump put on his Truth Social this conspiracy theory that Joe Biden died in like 2022 or something, and that he had been cloned, and that's who's been out there this whole time. He literally, like, this man who runs our country, who has nuclear codes, right, posted on the ironically named Truth Social that he thinks our previous president, who's very ill, is a clone. So it's just a kind of, so like as absurd and silly and fantastical a movie as Mickey 17 is, it's not really that crazy. Like, even like the science, like you're saying, not that crazy.
They're trying to go to space in like the next 10 years. They're trying to do Mickey 17 in the next 10 years. Like literally, like they're trying to leave the planet. It was like a rocket every day or some shit. Like it was crazy. I was like, you're just going to destroy the ozone layer and rot our planet from the inside. Like,
and for what?
Just go by yourself. Like leave everyone else here.
Yeah, just go. Just take it right now with your little, like, your game controller, whatever. And take all your drugs. Just go up to space. Leave us alone. What is on Mars? Just cause. Like, he just likes to do things for the lulz. And he doesn't understand that the lulz for him equal, like, the death of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And, like, the severe oppression of a lot of people.
Yeah.
You know.
And like, his reasoning... is that it's closer to the sun and the sun's gonna like die soon, or it's further from the sun, it's further from the sun, but the sun's gonna like get stronger and burn too hot for Earth to continue to exist, and then it'll be warm enough on Mars, and then we can grow plants on Mars. And it was like a whole thing, and I was like, okay, sir, like I get it. Like, want to go space. It's fine. I'm not dissing space. I think space is interesting as heck. I want to know what's going on there. Yeah. I never felt like I was from here. I feel like an alien. It's fine. Yeah. I get it. Go space.
But we don't want it to be like an evasive action.
Yeah.
We want it to be like a fun exploration. Like Octavia Butler saying, like, reach for the stars kind of thing. Like, that's because we've done all the exploring and, you know, fixing here on Earth, and now we're going to go and we're going to just do that better out there. It's not, we've messed this up so much, that's it.
Yeah.
It's like, look at what a good job we did. Now to do another one. Another good job.
We saved the world. Or aliens said we did such a bad job, but they fixed it.
Yes.
They fixed it instead of us.
We go to space and we have a replicator. Yeah. And nobody's hungry. Guess what? Nobody has to be hungry.
Yeah, we can all just take care of each other and have cool alien friends.
We have enough food for everyone. Scarcity is a myth. Anyway, the other thing I want to say, when you're talking about worker isolation, and not just like the physical worker isolation, but when we're also talking about that isolation from the work we do to the results, that's also reflected in the fact that Mickey had no idea that they were using that chemical. They were like testing the chemical weapon on him. He didn't know. He was just like, you're just killing me to save everyone. Like, there was at the very least, he thought he was doing something good. He was the young gardener boy, being, you know, infected with cowpox, but little did he know it wasn't. It was mustard gas, you know, like. Anyway.
Yeah, like he at least thought, like, my sacrifice was worth it.
Yeah.
And it was not.
So it was, again, that worker isolation thing. And we have a lot of episodes about that. Possessor is one of the good ones for that. Yeah. But I hope that this maybe inspired you to give it a shot. I know, again, that people have mixed ideas, and it is not the best of the Bong Joon-ho. I think it's just like, again, I have a hard time rating things sometimes because it's just different. And I think like it is absolutely way more realistic than Snowpiercer. So on that level, I'm like, this seems more realistic. And also Host is a little wacky, but like this one felt very real and felt like a genuine reaction and critique of our current circumstances. And even before like the series that we're in now, like the horrors that be came to be, like he was kind of calling out things that we were already experiencing. So I appreciate that it exists, and I hope, you know, Bong Joon-ho keeps doing what he does, because he does amazing work. And I say give it a shot, give it a try. It's 2 hours, you can do it. Especially if you sat through 3 hours of Robert Pattinson's Batman, you can handle 2 hours of Robert Pattinson's Mickey, because it's adorable. He's a sweetheart. If that's how Edward was in Twilight, I'd be Team Edward. But alas, he was not. He was a weirdo.
He was a little red flag walking around.
He was a lot of red flags. Yeah, sparkling like a little red flag gem. Ruby of a vampire. Awesome. So that was our Horrors of Society series. do let us know what you think about Mickey 17, and if we do, and we will, another Horrors of Society in the future, what you would like to see, maybe some books to read. Now I want to read Mickey 7.
Yeah, I saw it at Barnes & Noble the other day, and I was like, oh, look at that. Kismet. Like, I witnessed things that are...
There's a book I was going to review for Severance, but it also works for this, called The Employees, and it's like a sci-fi kind of dystopian thing that's also like this weird like disconnect from being a person. And like, you know, it was a trippy book.
Yeah.
But highly recommend. Also, don't get married.
Let your kids.
They'll turn them into sauce. What a freak. What a little freak.